Hello, everyone. This is Empowering Democracy. And our topic for tonight is Quo Vadis Harris. Where is Harris going? Well, from my point of view, looks like she's running an effective campaign. I'm not going to call it a good campaign. It may be good from the standpoint of she's likely to win. She's likely to boost the Democratic tickets. She's likely to be successful. I think she has rather glaring ethical problems in relation to foreign policy. Her public positions, both on Ukraine, and on Israel, are absolutely terrible. But in spite of that, I think she's going to win. And so I have to ask the question, where is she going with her presidency? Assuming, of course, that she has one, which I think is going to occur. I think maybe that's putting the cart before the horse, but I don't think it's too early to ask these questions, so I'm asking them. I'm going to share this one on Facebook. And then I'll be with you. I see Steve is here. Hi, Steve, and hi, Dee. I see Dee is here. And Lana's here. Hi, Lana. Great to see you. Lana says, the Twitterverse has brought up student loan repayment to begin in 3 days. Wonder if the voters will hold that against her, even though it's a Biden failure. Well, they may. They may. Certainly, that was a failure of the Biden administration. They were warned. They were warned about their strategy for forgiving student loan debt or stopping repayments. They were warned that their justification was weak in relation to the Education Act, and that there was a more direct and stronger justification they could have used. They were stubborn. They would not listen, and the result was a failure before the Supreme Court. So that ought to bother people, and they ought to hold it against the Biden administration. On the other hand, without a movement to put Jill Stein in power, the alternative they have, of course, is to stay home or vote for Harris. So it's the usual choice. It's really a very bad choice. So I guess the less said about that, the better. if you can stomach it in that situation, well, you have to decide whether you want to simply stay home or you want to vote for someone who, on a number of counts, does not deserve to be the president of the United States. Nevertheless, I think she's going to win, and my objective here tonight is to try to figure out where she's going. So I'm going to begin by looking at an article from Common Dreams. And this one has been around for a while, since September 24th. By Jessica Corbett, Harris backs eliminating Senate filibuster to restore federal abortion rights. This is so important, said Representative Jayapal. Quote, Congress needs to step up and codify abortion rights, and we do that by ending the filibuster. Right, so the first thing we have to question about it is, I'm glad that she wants to end the filibuster to codify Roe v. Wade, but why have the filibuster at all? Why not ask Schumer to get rid of the filibuster when the Senate comes back on January 3rd of 2025? Why fool around with the filibuster at all? Especially if they get a majority in the Senate, which they would have to do to get rid of the filibuster, or at least a 50-50 vote, to get rid of the filibuster, and then a tie-breaking vote from the vice president. Assuming they do get a 50-50 Senate, or better, then why not simply get rid of the filibuster, on everything, and give the president a greater chance of passing a large portion of her agenda? Why not ask for that? Why is she only asking for it with respect to Roe v. Wade? She says, quote, it's well within our reach to hold on to the majority in the Senate and take back the House. I don't know if it's well within their reach. I note there are fireworks outside my building. I don't know what they're celebrating on September 28th, but okay. Quote again, I'd also emphasize that while the presidential election is extremely important and dispositive of where we go moving forward, it also is about what we need to do to hold on to the Senate and win seats in the House. She says, quote, I think we should eliminate the filibuster for Roe, unquote, and get us to the point where 51 votes would be what we need to actually put back in law the protections for reproductive freedom and for the ability of every person and every woman to make decisions about their own body and not have their government tell them what to do. Once again, if she gets rid of the filibuster, then she needs only 50 votes in the Senate to do that, because Tim Walz could cast the deciding vote, on that issue. I also have to add, with respect to this, that it is not enough simply to codify Roe v. Wade into law. You have to protect Roe v. Wade from the United States Supreme Court. How do you do that? Again, you use the exceptions clause in Article 3, Section 2, and prevent the appellate courts of the United States from reviewing the legislation. There's some We know the Democrats know how to do this because the majority leader of the Senate, Chuck Schumer, uh, has introduced some legislation to get rid of the presidential immunity decision of the Supreme Court. And that legislation uses the exceptions clause to strip the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court away from that bill. So, of course, that also should be used when they codify the Roe v. Wade, okay, as well. In other words, they know how to do it. It's quite clear. They have no excuse. They need to strip jurisdiction from the Supreme Court for that as well. And by the way, they also need to strip the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court from a bill expanding the size of the Supreme Court. That's another thing that should be quickly passed. And by the way, they shouldn't add just 4 justices. They should add 6 new justices, just in case they make a mistake in appointing justices and they appoint someone like a Merrick Garland who might line up on too many issues with the conservatives on the Supreme Court. So you expand by 6 and not by 4. So you have a majority even if one should defect and go over to the other side. Of course, quote from Tina Smith, who's Democratic Senator from Minnesota, the other Democratic Senator from Minnesota. Quote, the filibuster is an undemocratic rule. It prevents us from passing policies that a majority of Americans want. Look no further than last week's vote, okay, on IVF, in vitro fertilization, of course. She said on Tuesday, and quote again, could not agree more with Vice President Harris. But of course, Vice President Harris said she wanted to do it for Roe. She didn't say she wanted to do it for IVF, did she? So, again, why not do it for everything and end this filibuster for good? The Hill reported that after Harris' comments, Schumer told journalists that if Senate Democrats retain their majority next year, they will discuss creating an abortion, quote, carve-out, unquote, in the filibuster rule to pass abortion rights legislation. Again, weak tea, too little. Why have a carve-out? Get rid of the filibuster rule altogether. Again, why are they fixing to have a carve-out? If Harris wants to be a strong president and to enact what she favors, she needs to get rid of the filibuster. So Trump is claiming on social media that Harris's position on the filibuster, quote, is a, quote, real threat, okay, to democracy. Yeah, like the Supreme Court is not a threat to democracy. Like Trump is not a threat to democracy. Come on. In response, Nina Turner, the senior fellow at the Institute on Race, Power, and Political Economy, declared that, quote, the filibuster is anti-democratic in nature. It's a rule that takes the votes necessary in the Senate from 50 to 60. Right on, Nina Turner. Right. So, somebody by the name of Aaron Blake said, Trump last week said calling people a threat to democracy is incitement, yet his campaign keeps saying it a lot more than the Dems. Oh, I hadn't noticed that, but if eliminating the filibuster is a threat to democracy, they might want to tell that to Trump, who pushed for that a lot in 2017 and 2018. The war room for Trump tweeted Kamala, quote, I think we should eliminate, the filibuster. Is that an accurate quote from her, or did she just say eliminate the filibuster with respect to Roe? Well, we could play this. We could find out. Let's see. It's on Twitter. See if it comes through. Okay, so she's wrong about the 51 votes. Only 50 votes would be needed. And she did say to eliminate the filibuster for Roe, not to eliminate the filibuster altogether. Of course, she got pushback from retiring Senator Joe Manchin, a key supporter of the filibuster. According to CNN's Manu Raju, the former Democrat who left the party in May, responded to the vice president's remark by saying, quote, shame on her. Shame on her. Shame on him. Shame on Sinema. Shame on all of them. Quote, she knows the filibuster is the holy grail of democracy. It's the only thing that keeps us talking and working together. If she gets rid of that, then this would be the House on steroids, unquote. Look, we need change in this country, a lot of it. If this would be the House on steroids, let's have the House on steroids. We need that. We need it badly. There are so many things to do, so many things to heal, so many problems to take care of. Can't have the filibuster anymore. Veteran Democratic political strategist Tom Bonnier said that, quote, defending the filibuster over women's bodily autonomy is one heck of a way for Joe Manchin to leave the scene. Though I imagine this lack of endorsement helps Harris much more than it hurts her, quote, unquote. Well, I hope Tom Bonnier is right. He may be right about that. By the way, though, if defending the filibuster over women's bodily autonomy is one heck of a way for Manchin to leave the scene, how about defending the filibuster over the climate emergency, or defending the filibuster over Medicare for all, or defending the filibuster over child tax credits, or defending the filibuster over lifting the minimum wage. There are so many things that are one heck of a way for Joe Manchin or Kyrsten Sinema to leave the scene. The other primary defender of the filibuster is Kyrsten Sinema, now an independent from Arizona, who ditched the Democratic Party later that year and is also leaving, that is in 2022, and is also leaving the chamber after this term. Thank God she's leaving. By the way, Ruben Gallego is ahead by, I believe, nearly 15 points in Arizona, looking very, very strong. Kari Lake's not going to catch up to him. In the absence of federal legislation, GOP state lawmakers have ramped up efforts to restrict reproductive freedom. Since the U.S. Supreme Court's right-wing justices, including 3 Trump appointees, reversed Roe, of course, in the Dobbs decision, Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health. Given the Republican-led attacks, reproductive freedom has been a major focus of the presidential contest. While Trump has bragged about his role in reversing Roe, Harris has blamed him for states recently enacted and deadly abortion bans. As well she should. It is, of course, his fault. It is, quote, great to finally hear Kamala Harris be clear as our candidate about ending the filibuster to restore abortion rights nationwide, unquote. For all, founder Kai Newkirk said Tuesday, quote, abolishing the Jim Crow relic minority veto is essential to undo abortion bans and deliver the progress our nation needs, unquote. And I guess there's a little hint of there of abolishing the Jim Crow relic for everything, but maybe I'm reading too much into that quote. Anyway, so it looks like Harris is going to do that at least for one thing. if the Democrats should gain control of the Senate. Again, I think people are taking for granted that uh, uh, they're definitely going to get the House back, but I think that's a pretty good bet. I think people are really annoyed at Speaker Johnson's House. I think the Democrats are likely to get the House back. If things keep going the way they've been trending lately, they may have quite a majority in the House, which would be good. So let's look at our let's look at our second piece for the night. Dee says share it on Facebook and X. Thank you, Dee. Evelina's here. Hello, Evelina. And oops. Let me get to our second piece in the area of where Kamala is going. And this is an opinion piece from Common Dreams. And there's Kamala, and she's waving on September 22nd. She is waving as she departs LaGuardia Airport in Queens, New York. She attended a campaign fundraiser in New York. This is a piece by Les Leopold, a longtime writer in support of unions and other progressive causes. And he says, please, Vice President Harris, stay away from Wall Street. Whoops, too late. This was done on September 25th, 2024. Thus says the Harris campaign holding a staggering $24 million in one night of fundraising on Wall Street. Rather than bragging about it, the campaign, she should be pointing out that Wall Street has killed the jobs of millions of working class voters, exactly the kind of voters who were needed to defeat Trump in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. So, of course, she is walking a fine line. She raised the $24 million in one night, from Wall Street, because she hasn't been pointing out that Wall Street has killed the jobs of millions of working class voters. Well, now maybe she should change her tune, but she probably figures she still needs more money, which he does need, since we failed to create a dump the corruption campaign that was sufficiently powerful to kill all the candidates who were taking big money during this campaign. So we have a big money presidential campaign. There's nothing to do about it. It's no good to punish somebody selectively and not somebody else who's doing the same thing. But of course, from her point of view, she has to balance off what she's going to say about Wall Street killing the jobs of millions of working class voters with our desire to keep on raking in those Wall Street funds. During her talk to the financial barons, Harris said what they wanted to hear, that she would, quote, encourage innovative technologies like AI and digital assets while protecting our consumers, and investors. So she's walking a fine line there too. She's trying to get Silicon Valley on her side and get big money from Silicon Valley, which she's probably already getting fairly big contributions from Silicon Valley. Unfortunately, she failed to say anything about protecting the jobs of working people who've been virtually slaughtered by Wall Street's financial maneuvers since the 1980s. Let us count the ways Wall Street's totally insane and unconscionable derivatives game crashed the economy in 2008 to 2009, leading to more than 6 million lost jobs in a matter of months. Many have never forgiven the Democrats for bailing out Wall Street while homeowners went under. Yeah, I've never forgiven the Democrats for bailing out Wall Street while homeowners went under. By 2008, 2009, I had already gotten out from under my home and have happily been a renter since. But I understand how traumatic that can be. And so I really empathize with the homeowners who went under. Wall Street's private equity companies turned leverage buyouts into a job-killing art form. Big investors buy companies with borrowed money and then put the debt onto the companies. Inevitably, workers are laid off to service the debt. Yeah, it's a beautiful financial maneuver by Wall Street, so elegant. Wall Street successfully lobbied for corporate-friendly trade deals so they could make enormous fees by financing the movement of U.S. industrial facilities away from the U.S. An estimated 5 million manufacturing workers, many in the Midwest, lost their jobs in the process. So 6 million lost jobs due to the crash, 5 million lost jobs due to corporate-friendly trade deals. By the way, I wrote 2 books that dealt with the corporate-friendly trade deals. One was called The Declarations of Dependence. It's a Kindle book. And the other was called Who Needs Balanced Trade? Who Needs Balanced Budgets? They both Kindle books for sale, at Amazon. Both of them are truly great books. I highly recommend them to you. Wall Street, each of them is only $9.99. Of course, it's not a paper book, it's a Kindle book. Wall Street pressures corporations to buy back shares of their corporate stock, which artificially raises their price and makes billions for Wall Street giants. Worker jobs are sacrificed again and again to raise money for those buybacks of stock. In total, 30 million workers have gone through mass layoffs since 1996. Add in their families, and about half the working class have been impacted by Wall Street's shenanigans. See Wall Street's war on workers for how mass layoffs, not racism, sexism, or homophobia, have moved workers away from the Democratic Party in key swing states. Wall Street's war on workers is probably it's a book by Les Leopold. There's a Kindle version of the book for $9.18. Pretty good, but the hardcover is just about the same price if you prefer the paper variety. So, Les Leopold goes on, says, it's not too late for Harris to show she cares more about worker jobs than Wall Street's profits. What Harris needs to do, and soon, is give a major primetime address that does more than just talk about the economy. She needs to talk about job stability and how she will protect working people from being sacrificed on Wall Street's insatiable profit pyre. Harris' campaign is an establishment problem. The Democrats look like they are the establishment. Of course, they see it all as win-win. You can let Wall Street profit wildly from AI and crypto BS and still protect the rest of us. But not many working class voters believe that. They resent elites because corporate elites, Wall Street elites, and yes, Democratic Party elites have been prospering while they have struggled. It would be far better if Harris showed a willingness to challenge Wall Street, even if it cost her some of the campaign plots she has plenty of already. She could do it with one simple sentence that I've been harping about for months. All she has to do is focus on the $700 billion in taxpayer money that now goes to corporations for goods, services, and subsidies. Here's the line. No taxpayer money shall go to corporations that lay off taxpayers or conduct stock but buybacks. Uh, I have to add here immediately, there's no such thing as taxpayer money at all, because the money that the federal government used to spend on things comes always from the creation of new money from the Federal Reserve. The taxpayer money is destroyed in the process of financial settlements when it's deposited in the Treasury accounts. So, but what she could do is focus on $700 billion in public money that now goes to corporations for goods, services, and subsidies. No public money shall go to corporations that lay off employees or conduct stock buybacks. And I think that's a pretty effective one line also. Les says, though, to clarify the point, she should add, for those companies receiving, she says, taxpayer money, I would say public money, layoffs must be voluntary, not compulsory, as is already the case for many white-collar employees. I think that I would say, rather than layoffs being voluntary, okay, though I kind of like the idea, I have to say, but I would add that not just for companies receiving taxpayer money, but for everybody, the way to compensate for layoffs is to create a public option for employment, specifically the federal job guarantee. As I've said here many times, if you enact the federal job guarantee at a true living wage, off the top of my head, that's probably one that would average about $25 per hour across the country. What you do is you compute how much people need for a socially inclusive true living wage for the lowest cost area in the United States. And whatever that is, I don't know, probably today it might be $20 an hour or $21 an hour. And you set the lowest living wage in the country at that price for the lowest cost area, and then you use the CPI to adjust upwards. Most probably the highest socially inclusive living wage for the job guarantee program would then be established at, I don't know, roughly $40 an hour, $42 an hour, something like that. So you'd have a socially inclusive living wage for federal job guarantee programs all across the United States. People could stay where they are to get employment. It's a great program. It's a terrific safety valve, which for many, many workers would involve a raise in pay to begin with. And they would recognize it as such and flock to the banner of the Democratic Party if they offered that. I'm confident, says Les Leopold, that such a message would be noticed and welcomed by working class voters of all persuasions and colors. To be sure, Harris would be attacked as a Marxist, a socialistic flamethrower, but so what? What she would have to say in response is, quote, my first loyalty is to protect the jobs of all Americans, unquote, and then keep repeating, quote, I'm not going to allow public money to go to corporations that are laying off Americans. Again, she doesn't have to tie something like this to the idea of taxpayer dollars. But she could even say, I'm not going to allow public money to go to corporations that are laying off taxpayers. She could do that. She doesn't have to say taxpayer dollars even. Will voters believe her? That depends in large part on what Harris actually believes. At least she is not burdened with taking personal donations, as was Hillary Clinton after she accepted $675,000 from Goldman Sachs for 3 speeches. Thank goodness. What Harris needs to do, and soon, is give a major primetime address that does more than just talk about, quote, the economy. She needs to talk about job stability and how she will protect working people from being sacrificed on Wall Street's insatiable profit pyre. I like that phrase, profit pyre. Today, polling shows that 70% of all workers are expecting job cuts in the near future. It is political malpractice not to address this tangible fear. It is. The very fact we've got to remind the Democratic Party to put jobs in the center of its messaging tells us why the race is so pathetically close. Is Trump filling the breach? While Harris is playing footsie with Wall Street, Trump called for a 200% tariff on the John Deere company if it moves jobs to Mexico. 1,000 jobs may be at stake. Back in June, I begged Joe Biden to intervene to stop this highly profitable company, which does billions in stock buybacks, from needlessly eliminating those jobs. In a future column, I will explore how the Democrats' failure to directly intervene may cost them the election. Why are Democrats so blind about job loss? Why are they leaving the working class field wide open to Trump? I think those are good questions. I agree with them. All I can say is they're very dumb about this. By the way, if they went for a federal job guarantee, I don't think big companies would work hard to try to defeat a federal job guarantee, especially if Harris would have come right out of the gate with it when she gets into the presidency and pushes it, okay, among her top things to get done. If she's as popular as I think she's going to be when she gets into office, and she strikes while the iron is hot, and she passes that fast, I think that would be a terrific thing to do for people, and they would really appreciate it. If she campaigns on it, I'm sure she would increase the chances that rural voters here in the United States, and many urban and suburban voters as well, would vote for her. But it would really be a way of waking up the rural economies to have the influx of that kind of money coming from the federal job guarantee program to the others. Of course, I've said that on a number of occasions, but it fits so well with this column, by Les Leopold, that I wanted to bring it up here again while endorsing some of Leopold's views. Let me check your comments at this point. Oh, I see Cowboy Kitty is here. Hello, Cowboy Kitty. Robert Copeland is here. Hello, Robert. Good to see you. Steve says, I don't think Kamala will win because unless they steal the election, which they probably will. Oh, it's to steal again, right? Who's trying to steal the election now? In Georgia and Texas, They're trying to throw hundreds of thousands of voters off the rolls right now. So who's stealing right now? Robert Copeman says, I really don't think dump the corruption, because if you follow dump the corruption, people could vote for somebody that is against their values. Well, you have to have faith in democracy, Robert. A little faith in democracy. That if everybody followed, dump the corruption, and then people turned to voting for the people they liked who still survive, uh, those people could be very, very good. There are going to be some terrible people also, but I think without the aid of the big money, people would likely vote for candidates who reflect their values, for candidates who support things like the federal job guarantee, for candidates who want to do something about climate change, who candidates are for Medicare for all. I mean, you're really worried that if everybody followed the dump the corruption, that somebody could win that doesn't share our values? Well, you have no faith in democracy if you think that. Evelina says, what they did to us homeowners and working people is simply unforgivable. I know. What they're doing to renters now is equally unforgivable. Yes. Cowboy Kitty. Cowboy Kitty says, D, Steve, Lana. Cowboy Kitty says, Joseph, thank you. And Lana says, hi, Dean Kitty. Hello, Cowboy Kitty. And Cowboy Kitty says, like the stream, peasants. Sorry. Lana says, speaking of Labor leaving the Democratic Party, what's with O'Brien of Teamsters speaking at the GOP convention? Well, O'Brien of Teamsters is a union leader. Okay. He's no longer a worker. Kamala says, I'm going to go ahead and serve Wall Street. And Lana says, hashtag job guarantee. Evelina says, ironically or not so much, renters movement tracking small homeowners trying to hold on to their property instead of confronting hedge funds that keep rents high. Yes. And she says, attacking, not tracking. And she says, vulture funds. She's right. Kamala says, my competitive moveset is sleep, talk, and last resort. Well, maybe so, but last resort could include a job guarantee. Kamala says, I don't believe in anything. I just do what the donors tell me. You're discriminating against me because I'm a Pokemon. You say she will be popular when she gets into the White House. I think she shouldn't be as popular as she is right now. Well, maybe for the first 2 months, okay, she will be. Uh, she's building a coalition and building a campaign that could give her a victory comparable to Obama's in 2009. That would give her a lot of power in the first few months. Robert says, Joe, I don't trust most politicians. Well, a very good reason not to trust most politicians is that they're bought by the big money. Maybe if they were not bought by the big money, you could trust more politicians. That's why we do dump the corruption. Kamala Harris says, Steve Wolf. Lana says, Pokemons are definitely suspicious. Oh, by the way, yeah, she spells Kamala in a different way. Who knows if she's even a she? But anyway, it's fun. So uh, let's keep having fun. So I'm going to share the screen for the next one in building this narrative that I'm building. Guess what? Oh, I screwed that up. This was a really interesting piece. Meet the 7 corporations doing the most to undermine democracy worldwide. This one is also from Common Dreams. It's by Olivia Rosane, written on published on September 23rd, 2024. Meet the 7 corporations doing the most to undermine democracy worldwide. Quote, unless we're organized and demanding responsive governments that actually meet the needs of people, it's corporate power that's going to set the agenda, unquote, one organizer said. Yes, how do we demand responsive governments? We do dump the corruption. That's what we do, because then the governments are going to be responsive to the voters and not to the corporations and not to the rich. But going on. Big tech, big oil, and private equity firms are among the leading companies that profit from controlling media and technology, accelerating the climate crisis, privatizing public goods and services, and violating human and workers' rights. The International Trade Union Confederation, the ITUC, revealed on Monday. The ITUC has labeled 7 major companies as, quote, corporate underminers of democracy that lobby against government attempts to hold them accountable and are headed by super rich individuals who fund right-wing political movements and leaders. I'm going to skip some of this to speed us up in time. Here's a tweet, though, from ITUC. They specifically mentioned the ITUC has revealed 2024 list of companies that profit by crushing workers. Want to know who's on it? Amazon, Blackstone, ExxonMobil, Tesla. Surprise, right? Amazon and Tesla, Blackstone and ExxonMobil. No surprise, okay, at all. Let's see what the full list says on Twitter. Still have to go somewhere else to get the full list. Corporate underminers of democracy. Okay. I just denied all cookies from this site. So the list of corporate underminers is Amazon.com, Blackstone Group, ExxonMobil, Glencore, Meta, Tesla, and the Vanguard Group. I have to confess, I'm not sure who Glencore is. Maybe one of you knows who Glencore is. Of course, Meta is Facebook, and the Vanguard Group. Okay, we know what happened to Twitter. Why isn't Twitter on here? I wonder. But so those are the ones. Going back to the article. Yeah, the full list is down here too. ITUC chose the 7 companies based on pre-existing reporting and research, as well as talks with allied groups like the Council of Global Unions and the Reactionary International Research Consortium. The 7 companies were, quote, emblematic, unquote, of a broader trend, and the Confederation said it would continue to add, quote, market-leading companies to the list. Quote, while these 7 corporations are among the most egregious underminers of democracy, they're hardly alone, unquote, the ITUC said, quote again, whether state-owned enterprises in China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia, private sector military contractors, or regulation-busting tech startups, the ITUC and its partners will continue to identify and track corporate underminers of democracy and their links to the far right, unquote. Amazon topped the list due to its, quote, union busting and low wages on multiple continents. their monopoly in e-commerce, egregious carbon emissions through its AWS data centers, corporate tax evasion, and lobbying at the national and international level, unquote. ITUC wrote. In the U.S., for example, Amazon has responded to attempts to hold it accountable for labor violations by challenging the constitutionality of the NLRB, while its founder, Jeff Bezos, voices liberal opinions. Amazon's political donations have advanced the right by challenging women's rights and antitrust efforts. Bezos is another anti-woman person. Huh? Blackstone is the world's largest private equity firm and private real estate owner whose CEO, Steven Schwartzman, has given to right-wing politicians, including former U.S. President Donald Trump's 2024 re-election campaign. It funds fossil fuel projects and the destruction of the Amazon and profited from speculating on the housing market after the 2008 financial crash. The United Nations Special Rapporteur on Housing said the company used it, quote, its significant resources and political leverage to undermine domestic laws and policies that would in fact improve access to adequate housing, unquote. ExxonMobil made the list largely for its history of funding climate but denial and its ongoing lobbying against needed environmental regulations. Quote, perhaps the greatest example of Exxon's disinterest in democratic liberation was its corporate commitment of nearly 4 decades to conceal from the public its own internal evidence that climate change was real, accelerating, and driven by fossil fuel use, while simultaneously financing far-right think tanks in the U.S. and Europe to inject climate skepticism and also denialism into the public discourse, unquote, ITUC wrote. I think for that, ExxonMobil should be given the corporate death penalty, don't you? Glencore is the world's largest commodities trader and the largest mining company when judged by revenue. Several civil society and indigenous rights groups have launched campaigns against it over its anti-democratic policies. It has allegedly funded right-wing paramilitaries in Colombia and anti-protest vigilantes in Peru. Quote, the company's undermining of democracy is not in dispute. It has in recent years pled guilty to committing bribery, corruption, and manipulation of markets in countries as varied as Venezuela, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cameroon, Equatorial Guinea, Cote d'Ivoire, Nigeria, and South Sudan, ITUC said. As the world's largest social media company, Meta's platforms such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram have roughly as many users as everyone expected to vote in 2024 worldwide, almost 4 billion. Yet there are concerns about what its impact on those elections will be, as right-wing groups from the U.S. to Germany to India have used Facebook to recruit new members, target the marginalized groups. Quote, Meta continues to aid right-wing political interests in weaponizing its algorithms to spread hate-filled propaganda around the world, unquote, ITUC wrote. Quote, increasingly, it has been engaged in dodging national regulation through the deployment of targeted lobbying campaigns, unquote. Tesla made the list for its belligerent, quote-unquote, anti-union stance, as well as the vocal anti-worker and right-wing politics of its CEO, Elon Musk. Of Musk, ITUC observed, as owner of the social networking platform X, formerly Twitter, he responded to one user's allegations about a coup in Bolivia, a country with lithium reserves considered highly valuable for electric vehicle manufacturers like Tesla, by saying, quote, we will coup whoever we want, deal with it, unquote. He has committed to donating $45 million per month to a political action committee to support the re-election campaign of Donald Trump and sought to build close relationships with other far-right leaders, including Argentina's Javier Milei And India's Narendra Modi. Musk has also replatformed and clearly expressed his support of white nationalist, anti-Semitic, and anti-LGBTQ plus accounts since taking ownership, of X. It is absolutely ridiculous for a Jewish person to express support for anti-Semitic groups, of course, but there are some very strange people who own these large corporations. Number 7 on the list is the Vanguard Group, an institutional investor that funds many of the other companies on the list, including with billions in the stock held by workers' retirement plans. Effectively, Vanguard uses the deferred wages of workers to lend capital to the same companies complicit in undermining democracy at work and in societies globally, unquote, ITUC wrote. ITUC is exposing this countries and companies in part to advance its agenda for a, quote, new social contract, unquote, that would ensure, quote, a world where the economy serves humanity, rights are protected, and the planet is preserved for future generations, unquote. So I will skip to the end here. ITUC is gathering signatures for a petition for a global treaty holding corporate power in check. I don't know if such a global treaty would be effective because I don't know that it would have any teeth. For international institutions like the UN to reflect the democratic will of workers, they must be willing to hold these corporate underminers of democracy accountable, the petition reads. That is why we are calling on you, quote, that is why we're calling on you to support a robust, binding international treaty on business and human rights, one that addresses the impact of transnational corporations on the human rights of millions of working people, unquote. I'm all for it, depending on the enforcement mechanisms for it. So the devil will be in the details there. So, where are we now? Where we are is, Kamala is going to get rid of the filibuster, she says. Is she going to get rid of the filibuster for everything so that she'll be able to regulate the corporations, so that she'll be able to undermine the great impact of the 7 corporations that are undermining our democracy? Is she going to come forward with programs to protect the rights of workers and to create a safety net for layoffs and things like that? Uh, we don't know, at this point. Of course, there are many people who do think they know and who do think that she's never going to do anything to protect workers. And that may be true. She doesn't have an encouraging track record, at this point. But before we go on to the final pieces, let's check your comments again. Uh, Kamala Harris says, Google Kamala Pokemon, laugh out loud. Robert Copeland says, the only politician I like has a chance of winning, is running for mayor of Sacramento. Evelina, Steve, you can't trust bad politicians. I believe in good politics. Steve says, hi, Kamala. Evelina says, believe. And Kamala says, this fusion is genius, laugh out loud. Well, thank you, Kamala. Robert says, right now I would rather support the rights of tenants than support any politician. Well, good, Robert. Please do support the rights of tenants. Kamala Harris says, Steve. Lana says, Glencore owns Polymet, which is trying to get approval for nickel and copper mining in Minnesota. That's only one part of what they are about, but an important part, Lana says. Lana says, Blackstone, grrr, yeah. All seven, grrr. Robert Coleman says, Invitation Homes in Avalon Bay should be on this list, and I can name many more companies. I'm sure they can too, but they wanted a short list to attract a lot of attention to those companies. Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African build background check. Laugh out loud, laugh out loud. The future go to be laugh out loud, fight right, fight. I'm not sure what that means. Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African. Blackstone and the two companies that I listed are against rent control and tenants' rights. Yes, I know they are. And Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African build background check. Says Obama's administration did that or did this. Obama's administration was very good for Blackstone, very favorable. Lana says, Robert, that would definitely go along with Blackstone being the big monster rental property owner. Robert says, right now I'm going against the California Apartment Association. It's probably controlled by Blackstone anyway. Lana says, that Elon Musk puts on Twitter. She says, that pile of something that Elon Musk puts on Twitter is downright scary. It is. Steve Wolfman says, Robert, thank you. Lana says, good for you, Robert. And Mexican Arab, Gaza, African build background checks. Joe Biden makes invasions and martial law great again. Yeah, I know. Could be. Could definitely be. Moving on. Okay, moving on. Here's an appeal from someone. Oh, I did this one already. So what did I miss? Let me see. Did I get everything? Hang on a minute. I have the feeling I missed something, so let me check it out. I can easily do that. Oh, I know why. This other one, Wake Up Democrats, Trump is Eating Your Lunch, is also by Les Leopold. So I had two by him in this set and failed to notice that. Anyway, well, this one says, Wake up, Democrats, Trump is eating your working class lunch. Yeah, he did that in 2016 also. Trump has promised to stick John Deere with a 200% tariff if it outsources U.S. jobs to Mexico. The Dems responded by getting a billionaire to call this insanity, quote unquote. Yeah, Les is right about that. The greed of the John Deere company is giving President Biden the perfect opportunity to win back working class voters. All he needs to do is put up a major fight to stop Deere from shipping U.S. jobs to Mexico. I wrote that on June 12, 2024, and the Democrats ignored me. Donald Trump did not. He just called for a 200% tariff on all John Deere imports. Yeah, Les mentioned that in the earlier article too. How the Democrats responded to Trump. In the worst way possible, they got billionaire Mark Cuban to say that Trump's clumsy effort to save 1,000 jobs is, quote, insanity, ridiculously bad and destructive, unquote. Cuban didn't even mention the plight of the workers. Cuban's argument is nothing short of embarrassing. He says that since the proposed tariff on Deere is higher than the one proposed on Chinese imports, Deere will be unable to compete with Chinese tractors and farm equipment. This will potentially lead, he said, to the destruction of one of the most historied companies in the United States of America, unquote. Well, uh, okay, what the Democrats could do is, if they wanted to save those jobs, they could simply say to Deere, if you move to Mexico, we're not going to put a 200% tariff on your equipment. We're just not going to let you export those pieces of equipment back to the United States in the first place. So forget about it. We could do that. The other thing we could do is we could let them export some jobs, the 1,000 jobs, okay, to Mexico, but also do the federal job guarantee at a living wage, socially inclusive, living wage. Those jobs might be better wages than a lot of the John Deere jobs. Actually, I think I favor both of those things. Because what's 1,000 jobs? It's peanuts compared to the number of jobs the job guarantee program is going to create, and the good the job guarantee program is going to do in lifting wages across the country. Why is it insane to preserve those 1,000 decent paying, unionized U.S. jobs? Well, let me ask the question, how decent paying are those jobs? Do they pay more than the average of $25 an hour I talked about, which would probably ensue from the kind of job guarantee program I talked about? I don't know. Cuban ignores the question of why Deere feels the need to ship jobs to Mexico. Deere argues that it must do so in order to stay competitive. This leads to a catch-22 proposition. If Deere moves jobs to Mexico and faces a stiff tariff, it will go under. And if it doesn't move the jobs to Mexico, it will become uncompetitive and also go under. Cuban is in line with how Deere justifies its layoffs to workers. If we don't cut 1,000 jobs now and move to Mexico, more jobs will be cut later. But what's wrong with this picture? The bigger and biggest problem is that Democrats in Cuba are unable to put workers and their livelihoods front and center. That's a very important point, and we should emphasize that again and again and again. They're unable to mouth these words. The 1,000 Deere workers should keep their jobs precisely because Deere, one of the greediest companies on earth, is loaded with profits and is pouring billions upon billions into stock buybacks, which is flat out true. Well, that suggests something else that we could do. Well, I think Les is going to cover that in the next paragraph. But again, we could just prohibit the movement of Deere to Mexico if it wants to sell back into the United States. But going on, last year Deere recorded $10 billion in profits, and the CEO was paid $26.7 million. The company also spent $12.2 billion. There's the big money on stock buybacks that enriched its top officers, as well as the big Wall Street funds that own loads of Deere stock. What are stock buybacks? A way for a company to boost the price of its shares by buying them on the open market, a blatant form of stock of stock manipulation that was illegal until deregulated by the Reagan administration. So, of course, the simple remedy here is prohibit the stock buybacks. And here's the simple truth: the move to Mexico is designed to cut labor costs in order to finance those stock buybacks. It's nothing to do with competition, Chinese or otherwise. As any deer worker would tell us, it's all about greed. The sad thing is that Cuban, a critic of stock buybacks, knows this as well, but refuses to call out deer. Mass layoffs are destroying the Democratic Party. My book, Wall Street's War on Workers, conclusively shows that from 1996 to 2020, as the layoff rate rose in any given county in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and the Democratic vote declined. In the rural counties, on average, one-third of the workforce suffered through mass layoffs. Losing your job in a county that has few decent employment alternatives does not lead to positive feelings about the party that is supposed to be the defender of the working class. Again, if you did the federal job guarantee program and there were layoffs, it's a safety net for the layoffs. People still have jobs, okay, at a living wage. The economy of those areas grows because of the job guarantee program, and that means that new industry can be founded there and can move there. Trump's intervention in 2017 to stop Carrier from moving an Indiana plant to Mexico was, quote, wildly popular, quote unquote, yet the Democrats remain tone deaf to the plight of mass layoff victims. The question is why? The answer involves understanding what John Kenneth Galbraith called, quote, the conventional wisdom, unquote, not James Kenneth Galbraith, Jamie Galbraith, but John Kenneth Galbraith, his father. There's an entrenched sense in the Democratic Party of what kinds of interventions are acceptable in financialized capitalism, which are not. And here's a real potential problem for Harris. Here are the few of the internalized rules. It's okay to tax stock buybacks, but it's not okay to outlaw them. Again, she ought to outlaw them. It's okay to raise taxes on corporations, but it's not okay to interfere with their power to lay off workers, okay, at will. It is okay, and she should do that. It's okay to provide taxpayer funds to subsidize corporations to make investments, but it's not okay to tell corporations they can't use public money. He says taxpayers' funds, I'm going to say. Public money to lay off taxpayers or conduct stock buybacks. It's okay to regulate new technologies so consumers don't get ripped off, but it's not okay to protect worker livelihoods from such technologies. It's okay to bail out private big banks. Of course, the job guarantee, again, would protect worker livelihoods from such technologies. It's okay to bail out private big banks with public money, but it's not okay to turn them into public banks. Yeah, it would be great to turn them into public banks. It's okay to go after monopoly price gouging, but it's not okay to stop, okay, the monopoly mass layoffs. That's interesting. Of course, it's okay to do all those other things from our point of view. It's okay to ask for 60-day notice for mass layoffs, but it's not okay to stop compulsory layoffs when they use to jack up CEO pay, service harmful leverage buyout debts, or fund stock buybacks. On a deeper level, what ties all this together is a profound faith in corporate power and efficiency. It will be for the better for all of us if billionaire CEOs are free to run their corporations as they see fit. That faith includes protecting the right of corporations to hire and fire at will. After all, new technologies and globalization inevitably involve the churning of jobs, don't they? Trying to stop or slow down that process will only cripple the economy, won't it? And we certainly don't want a country where government officials tell billionaires what to do we? Well, of course, all those things would be good to do. Therefore, a sober, realistic Democratic Party, trapped in its conventional wisdom, will refuse to intervene in corporate hiring and firing. Instead, they travel down the uninspiring road and unconvincing path, creating an, quote, opportunity economy, Harris's deal, growing new jobs for the future, from taxpayer subsidies to chip mayors and the like. Not so with Trump. He swings a wrecking ball at the conventional wisdom. He acts as if he actually believes the job should not be exported to low wage countries, and that puts him in tune with nearly every U.S. industrial worker. To be sure, many Democrats believe the same. The difference is that Trump has no built in guardrails about intervening in corporate decision making. You move jobs to Mexico, he bellows, and it will slap a tariff on your butt that is so high that it will be much cheaper for you to keep the jobs here. That has to be music to the ears of every dear worker facing the axe, and it certainly will get the attention of millions of workers who've seen their jobs shipped abroad. It's not too late for Democrats to act because Trump has difficulty focusing on a coherent message. The field is still open for the Democrats to put forth a new policy that directly affects the jobs of millions of workers. I'm a broken record on this because it's so very simple. Harris should give a primetime talk and focus on the $700 billion in, he says, taxpayer money, I say public money, that now goes to private corporations for goods, services, and subsidies. Here's a line she should stress. No public money shall go to corporations that lay off taxpayers or conduct stock buybacks. To clarify the point, she should add some pragmatic flexibility. For those companies receiving, again, public money, layoffs must be voluntary, not compulsory, as is already the case for many white collar employees. This would seem fair and just to millions of workers, even if Wall Street would find it insane. But by the way, there are many corporations now, or some corporations now, that when they have layoffs, they buy out the workers. They actually offer money if the workers will accept, a layoff. Uh, that works, in many organizations and gives workers a chance to acquire capital, which they then can use to start up a business of their own. So the idea, voluntary layoffs, uh, it's really not a bad idea. It can be very helpful to capitalism as well. So that's an interesting thing to note, I think. Uh, that would seem fair and just to millions of workers, even if Wall Street would find it insane. The Democrats must decide, and soon, whether they really are the party of the working class. If they are, then they must fight hard to save worker jobs from unabated corporate greed. Is that really too much to ask? I don't think it's too much to ask, and I think Harris, ought to pursue it. Now, while we consider what she ought to pursue and the connections she ought to make and what her narrative ought to be and what her broader policies ought to be, what her broader agenda ought to be, there is a piece which has just appeared in the American Prospect on, the Harris agenda. So let's, before I go to that, let me check out what you folks had to say. So Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African build background checks. This Joe Biden makes inversions and martial law great again. Martial law is Martial. Evelina says the duopoly is very bad for politics. It is. It certainly is. Because they're not competing. And Evelina says both parties compete to show who's better than the other. Yeah. California Apartment Association gets their money from a lot of corporate landlords, but claim they are for the small mom and pop landlords. Yes. And Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African build background checks. You have a democracy, banana republic. Labral feel. I'm not sure what that means. Steve says, my friend in Costa Rica says there are a lot of Chinese electric vehicles on their roads now. Yeah, the Chinese electric vehicles are very good and very cheap, I understand. The BYG vehicles are supposed to be terrific. Evelina says a third party is good politics. It is. So how do we get a third party going? The way we get a third party going is we dump the corruption. One effective dump to corruption would be we would be dumping most of the people from the two major parties. That would certainly allow third parties to break through. Probably fourth parties also. Probably fifth parties also. It would create a multi party system here in the United States. That would be excellent. Lana says, it annoys me I don't have the option to even look at a Chinese EV. Annoys me too. Mexican, Arab, Gaza, African built background check. This decade is about dictated traffic, ROM, narcissistic culture, Marxism, monopoly. Bullshit. It makes sense. Now vote for Trump. It makes millions. A lot. Steve Wolfman says, Lana agreed. Evelyn says, self-defeating to imagine duopolies of the future. Not to mention too unpragmatic. Yeah, that's why we got to do dump the corruption. And Mexican, Arab, Gaza, and so on says, make religion great again, pro-life and pro-spirit life meets. That's also Mexican, Arab, Gaza, and so on. Steve says, AI and robots will change everything very soon. True, Steve, true. Lana says, what did you think of Trump's press interview with Zelensky standing by looking like uh, he was being tortured? I don't know. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was stupid, just stupid. The whole thing was stupid. Evelina says, I see Chinese TV in Spanish. Cool. Okay, let's get into the last of our pieces for tonight. That's very illuminating, actually. Very interesting. It's by Dave Dayan. He's a great editor for the American Prospect, a great writer. Also, uh, he's a very detailed guy. Here's a photo from of Harris. She was making a speech at the Economic Club. Okay, Pittsburgh. There she laid out aspects of her economic plan in a speech on Wednesday. One of the moments that stood out in Kamala Harris's big speech at the Economic Club of Pittsburgh on Wednesday was when she offered tax credits to manufacturing firms that protect American jobs. And when she called for increasing investment in public sector research and development agencies, and when she vowed to stockpile critical minerals key to the energy transition and national security, and when she said she would take on China's forced technology transfer and intellectual property theft, and when she endorsed Buy America requirements in procurement and contracting, and when she said that investments in manufacturing would be offset by preventing operatic accounting strategies big corporations use to hide money overseas. Or rather, those moments stood out from the fact sheet the Harris campaign sent around after the speech. None of them actually appeared in the speech itself, but like many a corporate retreat, the deliverables looked a little better than what the CEO had to say. The audiences are different, of course. The speech was billed as a way to display an animating vision behind the quote, new way forward, unquote headlines the campaign has foregrounded. Because Harris got such a late start campaigning, she doesn't have the years of consistent messaging native to most presidential candidates. And she is very hypersensitive about being tagged as a radical, both to the voting public and to the donor base that has driven up her fundraising, trying to both lock in trust and dispel mischaracterizations to both pitch toward the undecided voter and maintain the hype from the base that accompanied her substitution for Joe Biden in the race is a real high wire act. It leads to cockeyed statements like quoting Franklin Roosevelt's desire for bold, persistent experimentation, quote unquote, to get out of the depression in his case, with a promise for, quote, practical solutions, unquote, and, quote, pragmatic, unquote, approaches, which may be virtuous but are less than bold. It leads to boasting of the Biden-Harris record while also rhetorically shredding it. It leads to shaking our head at the largest corporations making record profits, quote unquote, and demeaning Donald Trump for making the economy only work, quote, for those who own the big skyscrapers, not those who build them, unquote, while also seeking an active partnership between government and the private sector, unquote, to, quote, fully unlock economic opportunity, unquote. It's just an awkward fit, one that wouldn't be so awkward if there wasn't this need to make up for lost time and overcompensate. I should say that the last 35 years of presidential politics, a pretty good run for Democrats, nearly all of them wins in the popular vote, have taught us that populist economics sells in campaigning. Bill Clinton said that people who work hard and play by the rules can get ahead. Al Gore took the people versus the powerful to a comeback win in the popular vote, that is. And Barack Obama, struggling under the weight of a stagnant economy, absolutely obliterated Mitt Romney as a corporate ghoul. You see wisps of this in the Harris approach, aligning Trump with the wealthy and foregrounding the needs of the middle class. But it's so larded up with pay-ons to innovation and, quote, emerging technologies, unquote, like blockchain, that it's hard to take in. The fact sheet doesn't have to make such somersaults and splits. It can just string together what the Harris-Walz administration wants to do to reach its goals. The fact sheet can just say they will build on industrial success in a country where real manufacturing construction investment is at the highest level in American history. It can cite the vice president's tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act. It doesn't have to tap dance. And the vision is actually coherent when shorn of the constant hedging and playing to multiple audiences. For starters, the fact sheet revised what has been an absent manufacturing pitch to the Rust Belt by highlighting new America forward, quote unquote, investments and extension of the policies of the Biden administration. Tax credits under this banner would be, quote, linked to the treatment of workers, ensuring the rights to organize, and supporting investments in long-standing manufacturing, energy, and agricultural communities. That surpasses what Biden was able to fully get in some provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act and other industrial policies. Why some of this money is being thrown into the sinkhole of artificial intelligence, this has as much capital available as any project in human history, is beyond me. Why do AI data centers need a tax break? But the rest, like, quote, green steel, unquote, technologies, which just got new market commitments this week, and other efforts to reduce industrial emissions, clean energy manufacturing, semiconductors, next generation transportation, and the tools and machines to make all that stuff is perfectly appropriate. Place-based investments give greater bonuses to facilities located in factory towns and energy communities, quote unquote. And there's one tantalizing line in the fact sheet that actually operationalizes the airy uh, 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 Harris rhetoric about an economy that works for everyone. It says that some investment tax credits will be given to, quote, reward companies that work with unions and communities to support workers and protect jobs, unquote. Incentives to keep companies in America goes beyond the narrow vision of industrial policy that only seeks to fight for the advanced forms of manufacturing of the future. Earlier in the week, Donald Trump threatened a 200% tariff on John Deere if they follow through on plans to move to Mexico. The problem is that Trump signed an updated free trade agreement with Mexico that prohibits retaliatory tariffs of that kind, making the threat empty. Trump, who has promised big corporate tax cuts for manufacturing and protectionist across the board tariffs, was actually pretty bad on outsourcing while president, since his tax law encouraged it. This is a testament to his inattention and laziness. In 2016, Trump used the bully pulpit to prevent some jobs at Carrier from moving to Mexico, but lost interest as Carrier jobs, along with those at the plant down the street, were eventually outsourced. Harris correctly identified in the speech that Carrier, quote, offshored hundreds of jobs to Mexico under Trump's watch, unquote. Another wisp of populism in a guarded address, but the line in the fact sheet goes further, offering a carrot to companies to keep production here rather than a pretend stick. Combine that with Harris's stated goal to double apprenticeships over the first term, offering skills and retraining to move into new manufacturing positions, as well as teaching and healthcare, and she can actually go to John Deere shift workers and say there's a real plan for their future instead of hot air. That aligns with her desire to emphasize skills, not just college degrees. Trump already removed degree requirements for most federal jobs, so I don't really know what a promise on that front signifies. But the Harris plan builds on skills development with federal investments in public school and public research and development, so knowledge is not privatized and hoarded for the benefit of industry. Cutting red tape and reforming permitting got a few shout outs in the speech, but the fact sheet spends more time on a public stockpile of critical minerals, reversing a grievous error the United States made long ago when it gave China the market in so-called, quote, rare earth, unquote, minerals, which are not, in fact, rare. The stockpile builds on Biden administration activities to strengthen critical mineral supply chains. The Defense Production Act was invoked last year to restart a lithium project in North Carolina and an antimony project in Idaho. There was hawkish rhetoric against China in the speech, but it goes further in the fact sheet, connecting to a recent action aimed at blocking the entry of, quote, counterfeit and unsafe, quote, consumer items. Other measures are trade actions like enforcing anti-dumping laws and stopping Chinese mandated technology transfer, which fall in line with the approach of current U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai. I didn't expect to see demands for China to stop undermining American shipbuilding, for example. Meanwhile, the same Buy America requirements would remain in place, according to the fact sheet, and even extend to contracting. And with a massive fight on taxes coming up next year, highlighting the ways that multinationals hide their profits in tax havens and tapping that as a way to offset their investments, puts a new dimension of that debate on the table. Yes, it does. Beyond the fact, Harris released an 82-page policy book, and while it highlights the manufacturing, care, economy, and housing production agenda she's expressed elsewhere, it also emphasizes revitalizing competition in the food sector, fighting abusive practices by pharmaceutical middlemen in the drug industry, eliminating junk fees, stopping algorithmic price fixing in rental markets, and watchdogging the bulk purposes of corporate landlords. As the links show, these also build on the current administration's successors. Whenever Harris needs to highlight her record, she invariably reaches back to something Biden's antitrust officials have done. There's a school of thought that if people like me aren't disappointed in a Democratic presidential campaign seeking the median voter, someone's not doing their job. I don't really think the median voter cares at all about crypto, as surveys indicate. If Harris feels like she has to play a pro-business moderate to get elected, what I will say is that she'd better get elected. Congressional candidates in close contacts have dug into the old-time populism for what it's worth. But if you set aside the rhetoric, you've got a continuation of the worker-centered industrial policies that Biden succeeded in bringing forward. I doubt the feasibility of a large governing agenda, given the precarious Democratic hold on the U.S. Senate. There's a better chance of continuity than change, this blueprint on domestic economics falls towards the former. I think that was a very good summary, okay, of the Harris agenda, and it's a hopeful summary, okay, of the Harris agenda. It emphasizes the regulatory aspects of it, the expansion, okay, of manufacturing, the incentives to corporations. Uh, it's good. Now, if it were only rounded out with a federal job guarantee program providing a public option safety net for people losing their jobs to technology or losing their jobs to export, it would be much, much stronger and much, much more attractive to working people in rural areas across the country. If Harris could come out with that, let's say in the next week, it would be the final nail in Trump's coffin. He would be soundly defeated. The victory of Harris would approach the kind of victory Obama had in 2008, and it would give her a lot of freedom to hit the ground running, to pass a whole lot of legislation we need to fix the problems the Supreme Court decisions have left us with, and would also create a lot of play for how to pass some popular economic measures that would strengthen her presidency as it goes forward, uh, and not have her face a situation where, as Biden did, she quickly runs out of steam for her presidency because she's always fighting with conservative Democrats themselves. Bonnie is signaling me to remind me that I have to take 2 pills, and I am grateful to her for reminding me at this point. So I'm going to do that, but this was, I think, a very useful article by Dave Dayen. Okay, a hopeful article. Of course, there's going to be the fighting with the lobbies, and Harris is always going to tend towards trying to run away when she gets some criticisms from them. She's done that enough in her career that we think that's a natural instinct for her. So we're going to have to pressure her very, very heavily on the other side. But the best way to pressure her is going to be to finally build the dump the corruption movement. Really, that is the best way to pressure her, because that way threatens all the Democrats in office and all the Republicans in office and the whole two-party system. And there's no better way to get the two-party politicians to start passing them some stuff that's good for us than threatening their whole goddamn system. So that's why we have to do the dump the corruption thing as quickly as we can once the election is over. We have to leap into dump the corruption once again and see if over the next 4 years we can create that kind of movement. In this respect, I see we still have a few more minutes. I want to bring up something that has received some play on the Sabby Sab show. And specifically the 11 demands idea. Let's see if I can quickly find it here. I don't have it up, and Ah, 11 demands, K, for real democracy. Okay, Sabby Sabs works with the producer. Okay, his handle, okay, is Eric T. Red. And uh, he pushes this idea of 11 demands for real democracy. Uh, okay, the 11 demands are: the first one is fix big money in politics and government. The second one is health care for all. The third one is a minimum standard of living, okay, for everyone. The fourth one is end the wars. The fifth one is respond to the climate emergency. Sixth is racial and criminal justice reform. The seventh is reject censorship. The eighth is immigration reform. The ninth is an election system we can trust. The 10th is revamp taxation and funding. And the 11th is democratize the enterprise. I agree with all of these demands. I agree with most of the sub-demands that are listed among the 11 categories here. Before I go, let me just share, the 11 demands page here with you. Let me do that. I'll share the link in the comments so you can go there yourself. It's a pretty well worked out set, okay, of demands. What it really is it's more like a platform for a political party. Okay, the way Eric sees it, and I think the way Sabby sees it also, is that these are demands for a new movement. Okay, and they're very expansive about this movement. They want people to self-organize around, okay, this movement and not support, okay, a candidate. In other words, work against or vote against candidates who do not accept all, okay, of these 11 uh, 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 demands. Okay, I would support uh, certainly such a movement. And the first of the demands is fixed big money in politics and government. So let's go into the sub demands here. Pass laws for clean elections and public financing of campaigns in every state. Enact a constitutional amendment that says corporations are not people, money is not speech. Regulate campaign spending and lobbying. Investigate and prosecute corruption at all levels of government. Ban revolving door politics. Investigate, prosecute companies that use jobs as bribes. Disallow former high-ranking employees serving as representatives or lobbyists. Demand radical transparency for all representatives in agencies. Now, I certainly support this, but I don't support it. I don't support the idea that we should just be putting these things forward and insist that every candidate support the whole movement before we work for them. And the reason for that is that this is such a big, big thing to swallow. we are never going to get more than a minority of the population to support this, okay, uh, as a whole program, uh, to basically enforce, okay, on candidates by voting against them if they don't adhere for the whole program. In particular, to get fixed big money in politics and government done in the first place, you have to do it by using a dump the corruption campaign. You can't pass all these things, even one by one, without getting rid of the corruption first. And of course, you can't pass the laws for clean elections and public financing of campaigns in every state. You can't enact the constitutional amendment that they're calling for. You can't get laws regulating campaign spending and lobbying. You can't investigate and prosecute corruptions at all levels of government, or ban revolving doors, or get the radical transparency that you want, without first getting rid of the corruption in politics. That has to come first. I think a dump the corruption campaign is a precondition for pursuing these 11 demands for real democracy. So, that I think is the relationship of the dump the corruption campaign to the campaign for these 11 demands for real democracy. I would support both of these campaigns, but the dump the corruption campaign has to come first, because a necessary condition to get each of these demands supported by a significant part of the population is to get the corrupt people out of office in the first place, to clean house in Congress, clean house, okay, in the presidency, and pass the kind of legislation that's needed to clean house in the Supreme Court. And again, the only way to do that is, based on the studies I did of the House and the studies I did of the Senate, by using open secrets and looking at the money people are taking, it was obvious they're all taking big money. If you include taking substantial donations, uh, from relatively wealthy people, every person holding office in the National Congress, both House and Senate, was taking considerable big money. There wasn't one exception that we studied. So we have to get rid of all contributions in excess of $200. Anyone who takes such contributions has to be kicked out. And then we get entirely new people in Congress who are not taking those kinds of contributions, and so who are not beholden to individual rich people or large corporations. They will be free to respond to what the voters want. We know from public opinion surveys, we know a majority of voters, heavy majority, are for Medicare for all. We know heavy majorities are for meeting the climate emergency, doing whatever has to be done. We know there is majority support for a job guarantee program. Most of these things that are mentioned here, there would be majority support for. People going into the Congress, not beholden to big money, would have to respond, to the majority support for all of these things, including ending the wars, changing foreign policy, constructing a foreign policy that's collaborative. So, all of these are very good. I'd love to see this. But a precondition is dumping the corruption and kicking everybody out who has been taking the money. And right now, at this point, that, is everybody. So, there's one more thing I wanted to say tonight before I go to your comments and then close off. And that is, I wanted to say that I have a very difficult time here tonight, deciding to deciding to do this program on domestic concerns rather than on foreign policy concerns. Of course, the wars in the Middle East have heated up now. The Israelis were successful in killing the leader of Hezbollah, Sayed Hassan Nasrallah. He is gone now. They killed also a number of people along with him, in a bombing raid. They've been shredding the leadership of Hezbollah for some time now with targeted assassinations. Hezbollah, though, evidently remains intact, and now, of course, very, very angry and very, very concerned to retaliate in ways that will make the Israelis pay. Furthermore, the Iranians have responded in part by calling for volunteers to go to Lebanon to fight on the side of Hezbollah. And they're calling for up to 1 million volunteers to send. Now, there's no way the Israelis, I should say the Israelis would have enough trouble to handle the Hezbollah army of roughly 100 people. I'm sorry, 100,000 people. They are not going to be able to handle a ground force of 1.1 million people, while at the same time they keep the West Bank in line and Hamas in line and defend themselves against the missile attacks of the Iraqi resistance and the Syrian resistance and the Houthis. And this is just going to be devastating. So the Israelis are going to redouble their efforts to get us in, on their side. And we are not ready for war. We are not ready with our manufacturing capacity. We are not ready for a ground war. All we have now is an expeditionary force, and the expeditionary force is not even sufficiently large to make a dent there. We can support the Israelis with air power, and naval power, but we can't support them with a ground invasion. That is not going to work. And we can't really defend them against the rocket attacks because they have too many rockets and missiles, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and of course, the drones. And so, anyway, I thought I'd better get back to domestic affairs tonight. I'll be back talking about international relations again on Tuesday, but I thought I had to discipline myself and get to some of the domestic issues. Hence, that's why I focused on that in this particular stream. I hope I put together a coherent picture for you. Okay, I think I did. And I hope that if many of you should echo that, that it would have some influence on the Harris campaign. I will now go back to your comments. Steve Wolfbrand says, "Good night, everybody. Bedtime." Geez, Steve, that's early for you. Evelina says, in perfect Spanish, by the way. Lana says, "Good night, Steve." Lana says, "What is green steel?" I guess green steel is steel produced, okay, with green methods, so the emissions used in producing the steel are minimized. Kamala Harris says, "Was helping my Trumper neighbor who had a heart attack." Okay, I'm back. Oh my God. Sorry to hear your neighbor had had a heart attack. Robert Copeland says, "I would say less than 0.001% of the population of the United States has heard of dump to corruption." I completely agree, Robert. I want to change that. Why won't you join me? I mean, what you're doing is futile. It's futile. It's futile. You can make almost no impact with that. Anyway, Kamala says, "Oh, uh, still Kamala?" Laugh out loud. And Kamala Harris sends an icon my way, which I can't read in this interface. I can't see it. Evelina says, "I'm assuming Harris's manufacturing agenda is not a final draft. Her overseers are still working on it." I don't know if they are her overseers or her technical staff, but I'm sure they still are working on it. She published a policy book, an 82-page policy book, which I haven't had a chance to fully read yet. But I can say something about the table of contents, okay, in the policy book. It's divided into segments. Section 1, lower costs for middle class families. And that's divided into cut taxes for working people, lower food and grocery costs, lower health costs, lower prescription drug costs, lower energy costs, lower costs by protecting consumers from fees and frauds. So, in other words, there's quite a lot, of regulatory elements in this. There's discussion of each of these things in a few pages. Section 1 occupies from page 10 through page 34. Section 2 is build an opportunity economy to help Americans get ahead and build wealth. That's help Americans buy a home and afford rent. Invest in the small businesses that drive growth, innovation, and jobs. Invest in American innovation and industrial strength, powered by American workers. So obviously this section is about industrial policy. Create security and opportunity for workers and build a care economy. I certainly think that the job guarantee would fit in here. If she had anything on the job guarantee, I haven't read this, but I don't believe she does. Strengthen opportunity in communities across America. Well, there too, the job guarantee would help with that. Protect Americans' ability to retire, okay, with dignity. Not sure what's in there. Make our tax code more fair and promote growth. That covers pages 35 to pages 73. Then there's a concluding section on page 74 and 75. And then there are the end notes. Uh, I'm just scanning very quickly what's in this for. Okay, there are a lot of things in there. There's no job guarantee. There's a big emphasis on unions. Still trying to pass the PRO Act, of course. She'll never pass the PRO Act if she doesn't get rid of the filibuster. That's certainly true. Another reason why she has to get rid of the filibuster altogether. No, there's nothing in here about a federal job guarantee. But there's a lot of interesting stuff in here. I'll probably discuss the whole thing in a future stream. Okay. Going back to your comments, though, I'm assuming Harris Manufacturing Agenda. And Robert Coleman said the 11 demands doesn't go far enough for me. Well, that's fine. But it underlines, okay, the following point. You would have to add a 12th demand to this, at least a 12th demand. It may be a 13th demand. The more demands you add, the more difficult it is to get everybody to self-organize around those demands and create a movement supporting those demands. That's why it's important to handle this problem by first getting rid of the role of money in politics, by first doing dump the corruption. And then uh, what you have, okay, is political parties. And one of the political parties will probably support the 11 demands or the 12 demands, or, and the political parties will differentiate in relation to demands that they support. That's the natural way to consider, essentially multiple demands. Uh, that will work to get a good many of demands passed, maybe all the demands in a political system that is no longer corrupt. But the first thing you have to do is to get rid of the corruption. Kamala Harris, we have to slowly integrate the brainwashed. Even when this is subject to change at a polls moment, Kamala Harris says you can't just dump everything on them at once. Stick to a single issue and show receipts. It is important, okay, to prioritize. That's a problem I have, with the 11 demands. They don't appear to prioritize. I don't think you have to stick to a single issue, but when you're legislating, then you have to stick to a single issue. In other words, issues are solving problems. So what you do is you solve a problem at a time, then you move on to the next problem. And you do show receipts each time. And that's the way you build up political capital over a period of time. Once again, Google Kamala Pokemon, laugh out loud. Neither of the top issues I am fighting for, okay, are in the 11 demands. I would rather go after the big corporations. Isn't that in the 11 demands somewhere? Okay, I didn't go into all of the sub demands here, but uh, certainly, okay. So the 11th demand here, in the 11 demands, is democratize the enterprise, provide federal funds and incentives for employee-owned and controlled businesses, enforce antitrust laws, uh, break up the monopolies and large corporations. These are bullet points under democratize the enterprise. Promote and support labor unions as a key step toward worker-owned enterprises. Mandate that all publicly traded companies reserve board seats for employee representation. Transition companies that provide essential services into democratically controlled utilities. So those are the bullet points under democratize the enterprise. That may address some of the issues that you care about, Robert. Okay, in there. Of course, you couldn't tell from just my naming the 11 demands, but certainly that demand goes after the big corporations in spades. The ghost of Henry Kissinger says Kalma doesn't care if it's big, just if it has big money. Yeah, I agree. I'm sure that the hedge funds are quite popular with her. Uh, the ghost of Henry Kissinger, the ghost of Henry Kissinger, hard to type while Kitty is using the pineapples. And Robert says, I have a difference of opinion with Joe on more than one foreign issue. I'm sure you do. You have a difference with me on Ukraine. I seem to recall. The ghost of Henry Kissinger said, Joe is our golden boy. Evelina says, sorry, your technical staff. Where did that list of policy change demands come from? It came from Eric T. Red, okay, and a collaborator of his. Eric T. Red is the person who does the production work for Sabby Sabs. And he is a big, big reason for the success of her stream because he is a tremendous producer, a wonderful producer. Uh, Robert Copeland says, I am calling you out on your crap. Well, thank you, Robert. And Evelina says, Kamala Harris, the Pokemon, laugh out loud. Lana says, some of that sounds like pushing for worker co-ops, which is good. Yes, it does. And Evelina says, funny, laugh out loud. Lana says, Sabby got it behind the scenes guy, yeah. But he's not completely behind the scenes. Sometimes in the streams, she'll take a break for a few minutes and she'll hand the stream over to him and he will take on some of the discussion that's in the comments. He's a very smart guy. He's a very good guy and enormously competent. So he has a collaborator who co-authored, the 11 Demands with him. He credits the collaborator in his presentation here. Let me see if his collaborator is on the 11 Demands homepage. They talk about the 11 Demand strategy here, and also the strategy refers to MC slash DS. The M stands for money. The C stands for corruption. The D stands for demands. And the S stands for solutions, okay, in MCDS. So, in the 11 demands, they also have the solutions in there. And they say nothing will fundamentally change as long as big money runs the show. And of course, I couldn't agree more about that. Uh, there's also something in a proposed platform for a rear left candidate. They say, why you should avoid the phrase taxpayer dollars. And that's a reflection of MMT. Uh, they have there's a picture. Okay, there's a picture of Eric T. Red on this page. Also, Jason Call was in this particular stream. And this other guy, Larson Thomas, I believe, okay, is Eric T. Red's collaborator. No, it might be someone else. The Forum 11, I think there's another guy there who's the collaborator. Oh yeah, his name is Corey. Anyway, I'm going to leave the homepage there in the comments so you can see it. And that has more information on Eric. Also, there was some input from J.B. Font in this also. Okay, J.B. Fauntry is the person who's putting in the MMT input here. Robert says, well, I'm not going to be here Tuesday, as I will be attending a Sacramento City Council meeting. Well, I'll miss you, Robert. I'm sorry you won't be here Tuesday. Anyway, folks, I think I'm about done for tonight, and I will see you then on Tuesday, unless something really significant happens over there and causes me to default to an earlier stream. But thank you all very much for coming tonight. I enjoyed the stream tonight. I hope you did as well.